Welcome to ANEC Sports' coverage of the high school girls basketball offseason series. My name is Sam Frick. I'm the founder and editor at Around the Northeast Corner, covering schools across Northeast Indiana and Elkhart County. And so today we are taking a look at the Westview Lady Warriors representing the Northeast Corner Conference as their season came to an end in sectionals, losing to Prairie Heights in the opening round sectional play hosted by Central Noble in 2A Sectional 35. That team went 11-12 on the season. So we looked at Westview, and over the last 5 years or so, and during this time, Ryan Yoder has essentially been the head coach during these 5 years. And when Ryan took the job in 2020, we were in the midst of a global pandemic. Westview had been slowly but surely declining in terms of talent with the program. And that first year for Ryan Yoder was a struggle for the program, admittedly, as they went 3-20 on the season, winning just the one game against Hamilton in conference play, which is Hamilton. That is to be expected there. And so it was a long first year for Ryan Yoder. Year two went a bit better, doubled their win total in 22, winning 6 games in the process. However, they still had only won, I believe, one or two games in conference play. And then 22-23, they improved drastically to 10 wins, 10-15 that year. And it looked like by that point that Westview was moving the right direction, and the future seemed bright, having gone to the sectional championship game, falling to Central Noble, the host, 44-28 in that sectional final. Then comes 23-24. It was a long season for the program. I think a lot of us outside of Westview thought they would have a chance to have a decent team, maybe compete for a conference championship or a postseason championship, and it wasn't meant to be. They went 5-19 that year, played a lot of young kids that season. It was truly a rebuilding season of sorts for that program. And then this past season, they bounced back from the previous season and improved to their best record yet in the Ryan Yoder era, improving to 11-12 on the season and winning 5 games. I believe they won 5 games in conference play that season. So let's take a look at this 2024-25 season first, and then we'll take a look at some notable players, some key additions, some subtractions from this past season going into next year. So let's talk about the 24-25 season to kind of recap Westview's season. They opened this season at Hamilton on November the 7th. Normally, they play Hamilton in January, but because Hamilton is no longer a NECC member, that became Westview's first game of the season at Hamilton, where Westview won 44-11 in a non-conference game. 2 days later, they traveled to East Noble. On November 9th, fell 67-32 to a very talented East Noble team that would go on to win a sectional championship. 3 days later, on the 12th, they hosted Prairie Heights for their first home game of the season and picked up their first conference win of the season, 29-14. They would later play Prairie Heights 2 other times, both in the conference and in sectionals. We'll talk about in a matter of moments. 3 days later, on the 15th, they hosted Wawasee, fell by 20 to a pretty solid Wawasee program that played some good defense. Traveled to Lakewood Park on the 19th, fell to a talented Lakewood Park team 40-29. Played Goshen 2 days later on the 21st, fell by 12 to the Redhawks. Then they would go on to win 4 of their next 5 games, defeating Bethany Christian on the 26th, 56-31, and Mishawaka 58-30. However, the turn of the new month led to a surprising defeat for Westview on December the 5th, where the West Noble Chargers defeated the Westview Warriors in an upset 35-34. They would come back home on the 7th and defeat Cherubusco 56-44 and defeating Garrett at Westview 49-33 before falling to Central Noble 4 days later 46-33. The 17th and 19th would be road games for the Westview Warriors, both in conference play, as Westview rallied late in the game to defeat the Lakeland Lakers 52-51 on a last-second free throw for the Westview Warriors. And trying to remember exactly who hit that free throw that game. Hold on just a second here. That would have been, I believe that would have been, I think that would have been Olivia Bontrager, if I remember right. I believe that would have been Olivia Bontrager that made the game-winning free throw in that win at Lakeland. That was a doubleheader that night. December 19th, traveled to Fremont, ran to a buzzsaw in the Fremont Eagles 66-37. Fremont won 20 games that year and would go on to win a sectional championship. They hosted a very good Elkhart Christian team on January the 4th. ECA would go on to win a regional championship that season as Westview suffered a 56-38 defeat against the ECA team with a lot of returning players as well as a very talented freshman class. They would go on to win 3 in a row between January 7th and January the 15th. They defeated Heritage 62-19 in Westview, traveled to Jimtown for a 45-17 dub. They opened conference tournament play with a second round matchup at Prairie Heights where Westview defeated the Panthers 40-35 before falling to the Fairfield Falcons in the semifinals of the conference tournament 48-39 at Fairfield. Coming out of conference tournament week, they would host Angola on the 22nd, fell in a low-scoring contest to the Angola Hornets 36-32 in Westview. They would host the Fairfield Falcons in a highly anticipated Friday night doubleheader against the Fairfield Falcons, where Westview rallied from an early first quarter deficit to defeat the Fairfield Falcons 46-40 as Bree Corey led the Westview Warriors in victory lane. They would wrap up the regular season with a road game at Eastside where they fell 62-40 to the NECC champions, the Eastside Blazers, who would go on to make it to the semi-state championship game. Unfortunately for Westview, it would be a short postseason for Westview as they fell in the opening round of the 2A sectional 35 matchup at Central Noble, where they fell to the Prairie Heights Panthers by the score of 45-37, putting the Westview Warriors at 11-12 on the season, but a bright future still in place for the Westview Warriors in the coming years ahead. So now let's take a look at what to expect in terms of key departures and then key returnees. We'll start with 2 players they are going to have to replace going into next season, and that would be their 2 seniors, Karis Weinberg and Morgan Riesecker. Morgan Riesecker is committed to play soccer, I believe, at Indiana Wesleyan, as Morgan Riesecker had a tremendous soccer career for the girls soccer team that reached semi-states this past fall season. I believe she is going to Indiana Wesleyan. If it's not correct, I will have that corrected ahead of time. In the meantime, Karis Weinberg had a nice senior year, averaged 8.9 points per game, shot 37% from the floor, 33% from downtown, as she made 36 triples on the season, shot 63% from the foul line, averaged 2.7 rebounds, 1.5 steals per game. With the Westview Warriors, one of the key things that you're going to have with Westview coming back next season is they're going to bring back a lot of experience coming out of this past season, a lot of which are either going to be, these players are either going to be juniors or seniors, and a lot of them are going to have significant varsity experience along the way. One of which is going to be their second leading scorer in Bree Corey, a nice multi-sport athlete for Westview, primarily known for her play as a goalkeeper on the soccer team. She averaged 8 points per game while also shooting 41% from the floor. She did shoot 42% from 3, although didn't take a lot of threes this past season. She's primarily a big, so she don't take that many shots beyond the paints. She averaged 4.8 rebounds, 1 steal per game, and one of the key things Westview is going to have to continue to improve on going into next season is going to be their ability to grab defensive rebounds and be able to find offense from a variety of different players, avoid some of those cold spells that this team tends to go through at times at Westview. Another player coming back is going to be their point guard, Olivia Bontrager, who will soon be a 3-year starter for the Westview Warriors, averaging 5.7 points per game, 32% from the floor, 28% from 3, 62% from the foul line, 1.8 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 2.3 steals per game. The progression of Olivia Bontrager has been very noted over these past 2 years at Westview, as Olivia Bontrager is the true point guard of this Westview team. We have seen a player that has grown in confidence throughout her 2 years at Westview thus far, and towards the end of this past season, did see a little bit of a spurt offensively, where she did show a little bit of potential of what we could see over these next 2 years at Westview. One other player that I have always liked in these past couple years that will be back next season as a senior will be JJ Whetstone, averaging 5.7 points, 31% shooting, 24% from three, 67% from the foul line, 2.9 rebounds, 1.2 assists. I look back to that game against Westview where JJ Whetstone came off the bench, coming up with timely baskets, timely defensive boards, and really became kind of this energy spark for the Westview Warriors. These are just among several players that are coming back next season as Westview hopes to improve upon this season as this youth movement of talent starts to come through the Westview school system. In terms of pros and cons, one pro for sure for the Westview Warriors, obviously it is going to be experience. When you look at this varsity roster, they only graduate 2 players off of this past season, which is their starting shooting guard and essentially their starting small forward, basically on this Westview team, or power forward, depending on where you slot Reed Secker at Westview. But other than that, you're still bringing back your point guard. You're bringing back your starting big. You're bringing back one of your forwards back. You bring back some depth pieces on this team that are going to have bigger roles next year. And then obviously having your starting point guard back is a huge convenience for this program, a team that has struggled to find offense over the years. And you always need a point guard like a Livy Bontrager that can at least get you that sense of chemistry, that sense of consistency, and be able to take care of the basketball, something that Westview does seem to struggle at times over the years. And I think it's also worthy of note with Westview, they do have a nice, talented group of kids coming through the feeder system, particularly with the 7th grade team that I want to make sure I verify this real quickly here, but I do not believe they lost many games this year in the 7th grade level. So just wanted to look back here. Taking a look at for example, 5th grade girls went 4-0 at Warsaw today as they had a great 5th grade season for the Westview 5th grade team. I know the 7th grade team had just won the conference championship at the 7th grade level. We have seen recent success amongst past feeder teams winning conference championships. So we know that the talent movement is coming in place for the Westview Warriors. It's just a matter of being able to kind of build the nucleus needed for Westview to have sustained success. That's always going to be key for a school as small as Westview. 3-point shooting, that's one other thing that Westview does seem to have a pretty decent strength, is the ability to shoot the ball from downtown. If you look at this past season, compared to their 34% shooting as well as their 37% shooting from 2, they shot 29% from 3. They made 93s on 314 attempts, primarily due to the fact it's a smaller team, not a big team, primarily speaking. And so they typically are more reliant on shooting the 3 ball. They're more reliant on being able to move the basketball efficiently. And this past year, we saw a team that showed that at times that they can make a lot of 3s and be able to give defenses some trouble defending the perimeter. One other thing that's also a key thing at Westview is their selflessness. There's not one thing about this team that makes this team not play team basketball. They show a lot of good team chemistry. They're selfless. They're willing to share the basketball. This is a team that's averaging 11 assists per game, 8.7 steals. This is a very selfless team. There's not one player that really tries to play that hero ball, so to speak. So there's a sense of selflessness, there's a sense of team camaraderie with this program, and we do expect a lot of the same going into next season. Some areas to work on for Westview next season. I honestly think they would like to try to limit some of those cold spells that they kind of go through at times at Westview. They only average around 40 points per game this past season. So there have been times where the offense hasn't shown its full potential, or they struggle against quality defenses that limited their strengths. And obviously some of their size concerns were noted in some of those games. The defensive rebounding was an issue at times, particularly against teams that were very strong about grabbing those offensive boards, or against teams that have very talented guards that can score in a variety of different ways. We'd like to see Westview do a better job of be able to clean up the glass defensively. And then free throw shooting was a little bit of a weaker area as well. They did at times struggle from the free throw line, as they only shot 60% from the foul line. I mean, some of the players that are on this team, it is expected that they are going to struggle a little bit from the foul line, such as Bree Corey. I mean, Bree Corey's only a 47% foul shooter, but she's also a center. That is to be expected. Resecker, 56%, but she only took 9 free throws. Bond Trader, 62%. I think there's a room to improve there. Weinberg, only 63%. Lehman at 65%. Interestingly enough, 2 players coming back next season, both going to be seniors next year, and that is JJ Whetstone and Maddie Grossman. Both led the team in free throw percentage at 67%. So obviously, to look back on this season and to wrap things up on Westview, there's a lot of room for growth, but at the same time, you do have a lot of players back that are now starting to feel a sense of momentum starting to move forward for this program for the first time in quite some time for this program. You look back at Westview, it's a program with a lot of basketball success over the years. And we look back on the girls' teams, especially under Randy Yoder, the longtime head coach of the Westview Lady Warriors. You had the team that made it all the way to the state finals in 2006, which I believe Tiffany Fisher was on that team in 2006, that reached the state finals. Although they did not win that state championship game, still was a very special season for that program. And then you had probably the most dominant 4-year run in the history of the program, where they won a sectional every year from 2013 to 2016, where they had the talented 2016 class of Grace Hales, the all-time leading scorer at Westview, and Maria McCoy. So the program has a lot of history of basketball success. While they have not been immune to some rebuilding over these last 5 years, there is still an untapped potential with this program and a lot of talent coming through, with hopes of maybe someday, within the next couple years, maybe, just maybe, contending for an NECC championship, or at the very least, competing for a sectional title in the not too distant future.